Hey everyone, welcome back to the Glass Rogers Business Interruption webinar series. Of late, we've got a lot of responses, and even from attorneys who want to know what sort of key business documents and records that business owners should be keeping on hand to help themselves with a potential business interruption claim down the line. So we'll talk about some of those records, what a traditional business interruption document request from a claim examiner, claim preparer was going to look like. And then also, we'll talk about some key documents to keep in mind for specific coronavirus or COVID-19 specific claims. So we'll put up the list of the typical financial statements that we'll request at the end here. Just keep in mind that, particularly for business interruption claims, one of the things that's generally always asked for is some sort of monthly profit and loss statement. Generally, we'll try and also get some sort of tax return, and the only reason we really do that is just to be able to know that the amount of the monthly profit and loss statements, or your unaudited, say you're using QuickBooks or something to that effect, your unaudited monthly profit and loss statements ties back to some official figure that you've reported revenue based on. So if you remember last week, one of the things that we discussed is that we really want to be able to document the demand that exists for your products or services during this period of restoration. You're likely to face arguments on the subject of market loss, where your insurance carrier may ask you to delineate between what market losses existed outside of a covered loss versus what losses can be attributed directly to one cause versus another. And we need to be able to do that between the different covered causes of loss versus non-covered causes of loss. So coronavirus itself presents a novel challenge, and that is we hear every day about the testing, and that is indicative of the testing in people. But one of the real challenges is to be able to test for the virus on property. So in the ideal situation, we would have some ability to have someone come in, test, and show that the virus is on property, which presented the physical access to your property. The next logical step then is then to keep track of some of the individual records that may show that there were positive coronavirus diagnosis on property or within some reasonable proximity to the property. So the departments of health have a lot of information, and a lot of it is very helpful because you're able to drill down and look at the individual diagnosis down to a county by county level, or in many cases down to a zip code level. So that's helpful, but the more that you can identify it specific to your property in your policy, the better off you're going to be. So to the extent that you receive any correspondence of restrictions, or you have access to document some of the emergency orders that an individual county or city or some municipality places on the physical access to your facility, that's important to understand and keep in your files. So specific to landlords, I think one of the questions that we sometimes have been receiving is, how do I document abatements that I may be giving for rent? And obviously, to the extent that you have some sort of rental history, that's important to understand. But then additionally, you may want to actually document the reasons for an abatement and what your interpretation of an individual lease is, specific to how it ties to the physical access to the property itself. For service industry, it may be important to understand the appointments and what those look like during the period of time that you're affected. So to the extent that I have people that are calling, trying to schedule appointments, I show that there is a demand for my services or my products during the period of restoration, and it's important to put that down in writing. Just write it down on a piece of paper, stick it in a file. I think that's going to be important down the line, because as the market loss argument comes up, you want to be able to show, hey, had I been open on such and such day, I could have put butts in seats. So that's one of those things that, the more you can do, just try and jot that down, stick it in a file somewhere and keep it for safekeeping later on. It's going to be very, very helpful. Additionally, we'd also like to understand the cost to equip some of your employees to the extent they're able to work remotely. So those employees that are working from home, you may have an additional expense that pertains to outfitting them with the proper equipment to be able to work remotely from someplace other than your described premises in your property. So again, the task at hand is simple. And whether you're a $150 million a year revenue business with multiple locations in 6 states, or you're a solo shop with 1 location only, we're really trying to document the demand for our products and services in the moment. And the more detail you can do, the better. As a claim preparer, I love granular detail to be able to identify that the demands for my products existed, and these are the reasons why. Here's evidence of it, and then you can package it. Because again, as a measurement issue for a claim preparer, the challenge is going to be identifying financial losses pertaining to one cause of loss versus another. So this is all going to come down to the data. And the more data that you have and you're able to accumulate while you're going through the event, the better off you're going to be.